Welcome to this deep dive from the Digital Library of Designing the Future University, Rethinking the Higher Education Business Model, a playbook for university leaders, authored by Dr. Ghazwan Hassna. We are joined today by Dr. Ghazwan Hassna, the author of the playbook and a leading higher education strategist. And importantly, his expertise isn't just theoretical, it's very much grounded in institutional reality. He served as the Faculty Senate and Assembly Chair at Hawaii Pacific University for 2 consecutive terms, and before that as the Vice Chair, which gave him, unique firsthand insights into the complexities of shared governance and successful university transformation.
Thank you. It's really a privilege to share these ideas. The need for this kind of fundamental overhaul in higher education is urgent. For leaders, the clock really is ticking.
Absolutely. And our mission today, it's pretty clear. The traditional funding model, the one that's, balanced everything, operations, buildings, research mostly on tuition fees, it's failing. We need to figure out that non-negotiable shift towards more diverse, more resilient revenue streams, ones that will actually future-proof our institutions. It's about moving from just managing scarcity to, cultivating abundance.
That's a good way to put it. That balancing act analogy is very apt. What used to be tuition-first model, it's really become this tuition tightrope. And now in 2025, the cracks, the structural problems, they are just impossible to ignore. The crisis isn't just about the amount of money coming from students. It's the sheer weight those payments have to carry. Funding everything from basic utilities right up to cutting-edge research, this one single stream has been stretched to support the entire ecosystem.
Right. Let's unpack that a bit, the structural threat. For the leaders listening, they feel the enrollment pressure, sure, but we need to understand the systemic risk here. What's the hard data telling us? What proves this tuition model is actually collapsing, not just, shifting a little?
Well, the most glaring indicator is the student debt crisis itself. In the US, it's blown past 1.7 trillion. But what's maybe even more worrying is the rate it's growing. Over the last 10 years or so, this debt has shot up way faster than inflation, faster than the economy, and certainly faster than wages.
So it's not just a big number. It's a liability that's growing almost exponentially. And that changes how people see the value of a degree, doesn't it?
Precisely. Families aren't just assuming it's a good investment anymore. They are looking hard at the economics, and when universities lean too heavily on tuition, they actually limit who can attend, which shrinks their own market, funnily enough. And it leaves them incredibly vulnerable to, economic downturns or just changes in the demographics.
And we're seeing the consequences already. You don't have to look far to see colleges closing or facing huge financial problems, especially, it seems, the smaller and mid-sized ones. Are those just cases of bad management, or is it really proof that this tuition-first model gives you zero room for error?
I'd argue it's proof of the model's fragility. The fact that they can't pivot, can't innovate, can't even weather one bad enrollment cycle. That weakness is baked into the system if you rely so heavily on one funding source. For leaders, survival really depends on recognizing that every single dollar coming from tuition now carries this huge systematic risk. Diversification isn't just nice to have, it's essential to mitigate this risk.
Okay, so if the outside environment is shaky, leaders need to look inwards at the assets they already have. Universities often sit on enormous assets, right? IP, land, research labs, alumni networks, but they're often underused. So the strategic shift needed, as you put it in the playbook, is from just passively owning these things to actively entrepreneurially stewarding them. Where's the quickest win for generating revenue?
I think the most direct high-value opportunity is right there in the core mission, creating knowledge. We have to stop seeing research as just a cost center that tuition has to cover. Instead, we need to view intellectual property commercialization as a potentially major self-sustaining revenue engine. The real key is how you organize for that.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you actually operationalize commercialization without starting a culture war between the academic side and the market side?
It takes dedicated infrastructure, a real effective technology transfer office, a TTO staffed with people who get both patent law and market potential. Look at places like MIT or Stanford. Their income from licensing, from royalties, often makes up a really significant chunk of their non-tuition budget. They've shown that world-class research can pay for itself and even help fund the rest of the institution.
That's a big cultural shift, though, moving resources, maybe even prestige, away from just pure teaching towards research that has market applications.
It is. It's actually a strategic reallocation, a change in focus, and it leads directly into the next idea, the startup incubator model. It's not enough anymore to just, nurture faculty or student ideas. Universities need to keep an equity stake in the companies it helps launch. That way, successful innovation becomes a long-term compounding asset for the endowment. It's much more powerful than just collecting a one-off licensing fee.
Okay, let's shift to physical assets. University real estate holdings can be massive, but they're often managed very conservatively. How can leaders start thinking about land and buildings not just as costs, but as active income sources?
Real estate is this incredible, non-depleting asset with a huge potential for diversification. Strategic leaders needs to be willing, and I mean really willing, to partner with developers on mixed-use projects. That means taking underused land and turning it into something that generates income, maybe housing, retail spaces, offices, things that serve the community and provide steady passive income back to the university.
I can almost hear the objections now. Internal pushback about selling land or leasing it long-term, worries about diluting the mission. How do leaders navigate the internal politics of those big real estate plays?
By explicitly linking the financial return back to the mission. The revenue you generate has to clearly fund scholarships or build that new science wing or support faculty salaries, for example. You have to demonstrate very clearly that leveraging the asset makes the core mission stronger, not weaker. And lastly, endowments, they need to be managed more strategically, maybe even more aggressively, prioritizing investments that drive strong financial returns, but also align with the university's values and long-term impact goals.
That idea of mission alignment brings us back to the student. The old model puts almost all the financial risk on them, right? They pay up front no matter what happens after graduation. But we're starting to see this powerful shift towards shared investment models that tie the university's financial success directly to how well its students do. What are the most promising examples there?
This is where we really start to shift the burden, shift the risk away from the individual student. The main mechanism people talk about is the Income Shared Agreement, or ISA. With an ISA, students get funding for their education, but they only pay it back once they land a job that earns over a certain amount, and the repayment is just like a small percentage of their income for a set number of years.
That completely changes the incentives, doesn't it? Suddenly, the university has a direct financial stake in making sure every graduate gets a good job. That should drive curriculum changes, make programs more relevant. But what are the big hurdles to putting ISAs in place? It sounds, frankly, expensive and like an administrative nightmare.
You've hit on the right key challenges. ISAs aren't a magic bullet. They require serious upfront capital. The university basically has to act like a lender. And yes, they demand a really robust administrative system to track potentially thousands of graduates, their jobs, their incomes for years. Plus, you've got to navigate complicated regulations that vary from state to state. The institutions that are making it work are the ones really committing resources to build that administrative backbone. They are managing the risk effectively.
And if the goal is long-term relevance, we need to think beyond just that one-time degree transaction. Tell us more about this idea of subscription learning.
Right. Education needs to become more of a lifelong partnership. Subscription learning is one model for that. Imagine a student pays a recurring fee, maybe annually, not just for their initial degree, but for ongoing access to value. Things like micro-credentials, quick skill updates when needed, networking, career coaching support that evolves over their entire career, like maybe 40 years.
So it's basically a lifelong retention strategy framed as a financial model. What's the actual hook that keeps an alum paying, say, $500 a year, 20 years after they graduated?
The hook is career currency in today's job market. Skills get outdated fast. The degree alone isn't enough anymore. The subscription offers that essential continuous career maintenance package. It turns the university into a permanent resource for their career and for the institution. It generates steady, predictable revenue, much less volatile than chasing new enrollments every year. And one more related idea, like alumni investment pools, for example. This model uses the collective financial clout of alumni, but not just for traditional donations. Instead, they invest in specific high-impact things like funding those ISAs we talked about, or providing seed money for student startups, or maybe underwriting scholarships in critical new fields. It turns alumni from just donors into genuine financial partners in the university's future.
Everything we've discussed seems to point to one big theme. Universities just can't afford to be isolated ivory towers anymore. They have to strategically connect with the corporate world, with their local communities. This seems key to bridging that gap between academia and the job market, which brings both financial and social rewards. How do leaders actually start building these crucial partnerships?
Institutions really need to position themselves as a vital engine for talent. The most direct financial model here is creating funded programs with guaranteed placements. Companies need graduates with very specific job-ready skills. So the university works with the company to design a degree or certificate program. The company then helps fund it, maybe heavily, in return for a guaranteed pipeline of talent ready to hire.
So the university stops just reacting to what the job market might need 5 years down the line and starts actively co-creating the workforce supply chain with its partners.
Precisely, and this thinking extends to physical infrastructure too through public-private partnerships or PPPs. Think about big capital projects, a new science lab, a new research building, specialized student housing, maybe a shared sports facility. PPPs allows university to expand and upgrade without having to bear the entire financial weight themselves.
PPPs are often necessary, I get that, but they can be complex, big challenges around governance, long-term liabilities. How does a university use private investment without, losing control or compromising its core mission?
The governance structure is absolutely critical. Leaders have to negotiate partnership agreements that draw really clear lines between financial management and academic independence. The most successful PPPs often involve shared use facilities. These can cut long-term maintenance costs for the university while giving the private partner a stable, fairly low-risk return. The aim should always be financial relief, not giving up control. And finally, we have to stress local economic development. Universities need to ditch that old image of being walled off from their towns or cities. And they need to be seen as anchor institutions, hubs for innovation, for workforce training right there in their region. That kind of relevance acts like a magnet for city investment, for state and federal grants tied to economic growth, and for philanthropy from people who see the university as key to the region's prosperity. So resilience really comes when the university's success is clearly tied to the success of the community around it.
This has been incredibly insightful. To try and synthesize the challenge for the university leaders listening, financial sustainability means building this holistic ecosystem where tuition is managed carefully as one stream, yes, but never again the only foundation. It needs to be balanced with things like equity stakes in startups, getting value from IP, these shared investment models, and strong partnerships.
That's exactly the core message of the playbook. By 2035, universities that make these shifts successfully, they will look fundamentally different. They will prioritize real institutional impact, genuine innovation, and measurable outcomes over just chasing enrollment numbers that go up and down. The relationship with everyone, students, alumni, faculty, companies, the community, it will be one of shared ongoing investment, replacing that old-fashioned fragile transaction model.
And here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit provocative. This is the strategic challenge we want to leave you with today. The road to financial sustainability. It doesn't have to be that terrifying tightrope walk we've seen over the past decade. It means building something more resilient, a balanced structure grounded in creative finance and shared risk. The universities that will truly thrive in the next decade. They'll be the ones bold enough to step off that tuition tightrope and walk confidently into this new financial future, recognizing perhaps that their greatest assets were always the knowledge and the community they held all along.
Thank you so much for sharing the essence of this vital work.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
For more insights, frameworks, and tools to rethink higher education business models, consult the full playbook by Dr. Ghazwan Hassna.